We're looking at the idea of not only escaping from bad positions, but employing what we're calling the maximizing philosophy of escape, which is to create the conditions for escape and then identify a critical tipping point where your opponent no longer controls your ability to move. And from there, you switch from a defensive mindset to an offensive mindset. Instead of being satisfied with putting your opponent back in guard, you go for the maximizing option, the optimal option, which is to finish and submit your opponent. You will be delighted to learn that in the vast majority of cases, it is no more difficult and arguably less difficult to go into Ashigarami or other finishing positions than it is to go into a guard position. So why go for the satisfactory outcome when you can go for the optimal outcome? They cost you the same, arguably even less. So let's start to take this in the context of an athlete who's gotten behind you, has gotten two hooks in, and you're looking to get out of the rear mounted position. We're going to start off with Placido in behind and understand that there's a couple of problems we have to deal with here simultaneously. There are two battles going on here. There is a lower body battle where I fight against my opponent's hooks, and there is an upper body battle where I fight against the control of his arms, his head position, and potentially his ability to strangle me. Okay, so there's the upper body battle is a little more complex than the lower body battle. I'm going to go further and say that the upper body battle is more critical. It's one thing to get held in place by someone. That's bad, but it's a lot worse to get finished by someone. So my advice to you, right from the start, when you're dealing with rear mounted positions, win the upper body battle first. That's so important, I'm going to say it to you again. Focus on winning the upper body battle first. You can always win the lower body battle second. You can win the lower body battle and end up getting strangled. That's why I always urge people to focus on this battle first and then worry about this one second. Okay, at the very least, you might get held for a while, but you're not going to get finished. Okay, and that's far more important than any other consideration. Now, what does it mean to say winning the upper body battle? Well, there's a simple battle going on here. Placido has to maintain his head on the opposite side of his strangle hand. He has two arms. One goes under my arm and the other goes over. The over grip will be the one that strangles me. The under grip will be the one that controls my hands and cements the connection of his chest to my back. It's very important for him that he keep his strangle hand and his head on opposite sides of my head. If his head ever comes to the same side as the strangle hand, it's almost impossible for him to strangle me. So he needs opposite sides. And from here, he can finish me in a moment's notice. Okay? So that's the upper body battle. I have to monitor the strangle hand, and I have to bear in mind that he must keep his head and his strangle hand on opposite sides of my head. In addition, there's a third complication. The more his hands come up to my shoulder, the tighter his connection of chest to back. And at the same time, the more threatening his strangle hand becomes because the distance it has to travel has become less. It also means that I cannot move my head. The more he locks in tight to my shoulder, the more my head is constricted. So I always want his hands here on my sternum. When the hands are on my sternum, my head can move and I can diminish the contact of his chest to my back. The more his hands migrate up to the shoulder, the less freedom of movement that I have. Okay? So once again, the upper body battle is three major concerns. There are other concerns, but for now, let's just focus on the most critical three. One is hand position. He wants his hands high to the side. I want his hands low on the center line. That's our big first thing. Second thing, head position. He always wants his head opposite side of his strangle hand. If head goes to same side, there's almost no danger of a strangle. Okay, the danger has been mitigated. So he's always looking for that. The other thing is just straightforwardly monitoring the strangle hand. At any given moment, that hand can put me up. So I always want to make sure that I'm monitoring the strangle hand. So if he ever goes for a strangle, it's controlled. Okay, so those are the basics of the upper body game. Now it's time for us to start getting into the details. Placido and I are going to come close to the camera now because we're going to go over some exceedingly important details of hand control. Okay, go behind. From this position, this is your opponent's strangle hand. If his hand goes over and behind my shoulder, it's almost impossible for me now to stop the strangle. In order for me to control his strangle hand, I cannot control the wrist. This will prove inadequate. If he controls my wrist here, look how even though I'm holding with all my might and pulling down, if Placido inches the hand up, he will strangle me every single time. Grabbing someone's wrist is not effective. I don't care which hand you use. It is ineffective. It will not stop the strangle. I'm sure you've seen my students finishing many people from the back, and you'll see everyone gripping like so. When people try to stop, it's completely ineffective, and you see them tapping on the forearm. In order to stop someone strangling, I have to stop his hand moving from my center line to behind the shoulder. And the only way I can do that is by making my opponent's hand disappear. There are two ways I can do this. I can do it by taking inside thumb position, like so that when I hold Placido's hand, you cannot physically see his hand. Now, when Placido tries to migrate across the chest and strangle me, it's physically impossible because my thumb has taken the inside position. This area of the wrist, the area which you would slash if you were trying to kill yourself, is the area I want my thumb to operate. I take my thumb and lock. Now, even if Placido grabs my wrist and tries to come up with the strangle hand, with a single hand I can completely confound him because I control the end of the lever. If my hand migrates up the lever, now even if I tried to stop him, he could bring the hand up and strangle me. Similarly, with this hand here, if I grab the wrist, he easily defeats my poor position on the lever. But if I make his hand disappear, now when he tries to bring the hand up, it's easy for me to return it to the sternum and feed it back to the hand. Okay, take this out, buddy. So, if the hand is in the center, I just grab it. If the hand comes over the shoulder, I can't grab it that way, so I grab it this way. When I grab it, I strip it down to the sternum and I feed it back to my primary defensive hand. Let's understand that I have two hands to defend myself with, a primary and a secondary. The primary defensive hand always wants to control my opponent like so. It's the stronger of the two. But the primary defensive hand has a weakness. It has an inability to follow the hand beyond a certain point. The secondary hand is not quite as strong, but it has the advantage of reach, so that even if my opponent's hand goes all the way over my shoulder, it has the reach to bring it down, back to the sternum, and make a pass off to the primary defensive hand. So we have two hands, and they must work in concert. If the hand is at the sternum, I just grab it. If the hand has gone beyond the sternum, then I must perform a pass off and lock it in place. If my opponent's hands are locked in a seatbelt, I may not have direct access to the hand. So I must do the best I can and position over the top so that when my opponent goes to switch to a strangle, it will go directly into the grip that I favor. And always the key is to make my opponent's hand disappear. If you can physically see the hand, you can be strangled. Here you can physically see the hand, I can be strangled. Here, you cannot physically see the hand. He tries to strangle me. He tries to strangle me. That's where we do our gripping. If you're in a situation where you cannot access the hand directly, then get as close to it as possible so that when he does go to strangle you, you can go right to your preferred grips. Okay? These are the subtle rules which enable you to control an opponent's strangle hand and prevent yourself from being strangled out right from the start. Okay? The key elements: the primary defensive hand is based around inside thumb position. The secondary defensive hand is based on the idea of controlling the thumb. It is illegal in the sport of Jiu-Jitsu for me to grab the thumb itself. It is illegal for me to grab any 1, 2, or 3 digits, but it is fully legal for me to grab over the digits. This is legal. This is illegal. So my target is to cover the whole pad of the thumb. That way his hand disappears, and when he goes to strangle me, it feels like it's impossible. I use this to peel and bring it back to my primary defensive hand. Once I have the primary defensive hand in place, the main danger is Placido will come through and strip my primary defensive hand off. Now he'll go to strangle, and I must come back with the secondary. Now he's holding my primary. Look how I strip out and bring it back. So there will be hand fighting, where he's constantly looking to take my hand off, and I'm constantly looking to get that hand back on. Let's play around, Placido. And can you see how we work through this hand fight, where I never give him the opportunity to bring the hand up and behind the shoulder, where I can no longer access it with either primary or secondary hand, and now I will lose. This is the key to understand the beginnings of the hand fight. I said to you this before, guys, and I'll say it to you again. Focus on the hand fight first, because if you screw up the hand fight, you can be doing everything else right and still get strangled. Hands first, everything else second. Now, we looked at the idea of getting out of rear mounted positions. We saw step number 1, win the hand fight. Step number 2, win the head fight. Let's have a look at that right now. When someone gets behind us, we know that there has to be a certain relationship between their strangle hand and their head position. They must always have head and strangle hand on opposite sides of my head. If their head ever comes to the same side, it completely destroys their ability to lock on an effective strangle and makes escape very, very easy. So he's always interested in keeping this position, head one side, strangle hand the other. I'm always interested in breaking that. I want his head and strangle hand on the same side. So how are we going to do this against someone who knows what they're doing? We know right from the bat that our first concern is always getting this 2-on-1 grip, where we cover our opponent's hand to the greatest degree possible and back it up with the second and keep his hand close to our sternum. The more the hands come up towards my shoulder, the less mobility I have with my head and the greater his ability to keep his head on one side, strangle hand on the other. So always what we want to do is keep his hand low on the center line, down by the sternum. Okay? Now, I want to start tilting my opponent. I have the choice between going to one side or the other. Typically, we don't like to go straight back in a straight line. We want to tilt one side to the other. Most players are more comfortable escaping to the side of the underarm. So I'm going to demonstrate that first. Okay. As Placido locks up tight, I want to tilt to my left. Placido generally wants to tilt to my right. So a natural question is, who wins this battle? Well, there's a way to win this. We put our foot out wide. Then I straighten my second leg, and when Placido tries to take me to the right, you've begun an artificial tilt to the left. Why do I win this battle so easily? Because Placido has no contact with the floor. His only base on the mat is his two butt cheeks. That's a very narrow base. I, on the other hand, can widen my base very wide, and I can push off the floor because I have contact with the mat with my feet. Placido has no contact with the mat. And as a result, when it's time to tilt, I should always be able to win. As Placido tries to tilt me to the right, I can easily overwhelm him and tilt to the left. Now, Placido has his head on one side, strangle hand on the other. That's good for Placido. It's bad for me. So what I want to do under these circumstances is start to win the battle for head position. I bring the hands down, and as a result, because the hands are on the sternum, it's quite easy for me to track my head with your head. Placido, bring your head forward. it's quite easy for me to bring my head forward further than Placido can go. Placido is limited by my back. He can only bring his chest so far forward because my back is directly in his path. If his hands were locked up high in the shoulders, I couldn't bring my head forward. But because I've won the hand fight and put his hands on my sternum, it's pretty easy for me to bring my head further forward than he can take it. And as a result, I can bring my head into a position where his strangle hand and his head are on the same side. Now all that's required is for me to square my hips to the floor. I start turning like so. Placido has to try and desperately keep his foot over my hip. Okay? Because I've gotten to this position here, there's very little danger of a strangle. Okay? Because his head and his strangle hand are on the same side. What I need to do now is beat this foot. From this position, look how I just take my knee up. He's hooked in. Here, I can't beat the foot. I bring my knee and I point it this way. Hook him tight, buddy. No matter how tight he hooks in, I can always beat his hook by pointing my knee away from the hook. Then I bring my knee up and over, and I start stepping over my training partner's legs. As I start coming out to the side, I always want, under these circumstances, to start pinning the foot and coming down with my back and shoulders to the mat. Now, guys, do you remember all the times I talked about a tipping point, where there's a certain point of no return where you are officially out of the hold, and then you can start focusing on other things like offense, counter offense? The tipping point is my elbow. From here, as I come out, I take my elbow and I bring it to the floor. The second my elbow touches the floor, the cat's out of the bag. Placido couldn't strangle me here, even if he wanted to. His head's just in the wrong position. Okay, I don't even have to worry about the hand fighting. There's no danger. There's no strangle. So I just put my elbow on the floor and my hand frames across here at his hip. Now, I just start turning in towards him. The danger now is no longer the strangle. The danger now is him coming up and getting mounted on me. As he goes to step over, we're always conscious of bringing our knees to the inside position. And as a result, we're in a fine position now, instead of putting him back in guard, to go into variations of Ashigarami. Okay? From here, it's not a difficult thing for us to start that action of turning our training partner's body around like so. Many ways for us to go on the attack. If his knees are together, typically we go inside Senkaku. If the knees come apart, then typically we put a hand inside, and from situations like this, we have many different variations. Here I've chosen a crisscross ashi. You could have gone through into variations of 50-50, your choice. Okay. So once again, I start off, we'll demonstrate from a different angle. Okay, hands in the center. If his hands are in the center, my head can always go further forward than Placido's. He tries to follow my head. I should always be able to get my head in front. If I can get my head in front and tilt my opponent over, and I should always be able to win that battle because he has no contact with the mat, I do. When we get to here, go to bring your head forward, Placido. I can always bring my head further forward than his and get my head to the under position. Once my head goes underneath, now I've got to beat this annoying foot, this hook, okay? I control the hands. I point my knee away from his hook, just like so. And as a result, I can go over it. Once we get over, now it's all about the battle of the elbow. This is the critical tipping point. If I can get my elbow to the floor, I am out of this move, okay? So as we come over our training partner and start coming down, fight, and I get my elbow to the mat. Once the elbow touches the mat, I no longer care about the strangles. There's no danger of a strangle. The angle's all wrong. All I care about now is getting my feet to the inside position. If he tries to come up on top of me, it's suicide, because he's coming up onto an Ashigarami. If his head moves away from me, he gives me the heel. If his head moves towards me, he hides the heel, then he's going to give me other ways of attacking. And from here, many ways for us to go. Okay. Once you start to break the battle down into these compartmentalized battles, the battle of the hands, the battle of the head, and ultimately the battle of the elbow, and you identify the elbow as the critical tipping point where you switch from defense into offense, and you don't just put them back in guard, you put them in Ashigarami, you're going to not only will you get out of these positions, you'll get out and finish people. And that's what we're looking for. Let's understand something. That as we hit the escape, your opponent starts getting all those things that we talked about earlier in the video. He starts getting that idea, that dreadful idea of sunk cost. He had expended so much effort to get to this position. He took me down. He passed my guard. He got to the mount. He got to the rear mount. He's expended a lot of it. He doesn't want to give it up for free. He put so much into this. Okay? And as we come out and tilt and tilt and tilt and win that essential head battle, and from here we start coming out the other way, pointing our knee away and getting over his foot, and then getting our elbow down. Do you think he's just going to give up here and just let go? Of course not. He's invested so much at this point. He's like, well, I lost the rear mount. At least let me get mounted out of this. Maybe get some extra points or something. Okay, and yet that just brings him right onto our legs. Okay, and from situations like this, not so hard for us to start that turning action that we always favor. Okay, not so hard for us under these circumstances to start turning through in any way that we favor, to go into various forms of leg attack and go in for our finishes. Seen in this light, you will start to see that as an escape occurs, it's such an easy thing for us to switch our mindset with being satisfied with guard position and instead looking for the maximizing option. That philosophy of getting away from satisfactory outcomes and going for optimal outcomes will mean a difference between being someone who just got out of a bad situation to one who got out of a bad situation and just immediately finished his opponent. Again, imagine how daunting this would be for your opponent who's taken you down, past your guard, gotten into the mounted position, worked his way to the rear mount position, was almost finishing you, and then suddenly he loses by heel hook. It's like, damn, it's like, I did everything I was supposed to do in Jiu-Jitsu and I got finished. It's a daunting thing for your opponent to be exposed to. One more time, just looking from a different angle. Some things just don't change. First one, win the hand fight. None of this is going to happen if his hands are going up and over my shoulders. Okay, so win that hand fight, lock it in close. Second, win the head fight. As you start tilting your opponent over, get your head in front of his head. Once we've done that, I've got to beat this hook. So what do? I start bringing my knee away from the hook and start going over my training partner's legs. Now from here, elbow. Once my elbow touches down on my training partner's body, it's about inside foot position. From inside foot position, not so difficult for us now to make that switch from going from offense to from defense to offense. He goes to spin out, and you're going to find it's an easy thing to roll through on a training partner and get into some of our favorite finishing positions. Now we look at the idea of getting out of the rear mounted position. The general method that we're looking at is the sliding elbow escape, where we slide our body progressively further and further away from our opponent because we were able to win the hand fight, win the head fight, and get our back and shoulders to the mat, culminating in our elbow touching the floor. By the time you've slid away from your opponent and your elbow touches the floor, you're essentially in position for an elbow escape. He tries to mount, you throw your legs in. Instead of putting him defensively back in guard, you put him into ashigarami, you finish him with a leg lock. Everything we've done so far has been a situation where Placido was behind me and we've identified an overhand and an underhand. And our general preference was to go towards the side of the underhand, okay, at least in this basic form of escape. Your opponent, in general, will have a preference to go towards the strangle hand. Why? Because when he goes towards the strangle hand, I can never win the battle for head position. Even if my head is in front of him, he can still strangle me. I can't, under these circumstances, unless I actually move the hand, create situations where the head and the strangle hand end up on the same side. Okay, I can't. I'll say that again. I can't use the previous method to get head and strangle hand on the same side. There is another method which we'll look at now, which does work. So it's in his best interest to move me to this side. So a natural question is, well, what do I do if he does succeed in taking me to the side? What if he wins the battle for the tilt and takes me to the side of the strangle hand? Well, whenever we feel this happening, one thing never changes. You always want to win the battle for the hand fight. I want to keep his hands on my sternum. He wants his hands coming up to the shoulder so he can make quick transitions into strangles. So when we win that battle for the hand fight, we're going to start to use this now. He locks in tight with his feet. We're going to take our body and start turning our body like so that my body is parallel with the mat. He wants my body here on one shoulder. I want my shoulders turning down towards the mat. Now, what I want to do in this case is look back at my opponent. If I'm looking away from him, his arm catches underneath my jaw and creates tremendous leverage to hold me. So what I want to do is get my chin inside of my opponent's forearm and wrist, just like so. And I want to switch my hand grip from a grip where I have one thumb inside and one hand over to one where I have two thumbs controlling. So he locks up, I grip just in like so. Now, what I want to do under these circumstances is first beat my training partner's hook. How do I do that? By pointing my knee away from the hook. Then from here, I start turning in and I start looking and sliding down. Hold tight. If my chin is over, I'll never move this hand. But if I get my chin inside his wrist, it's quite easy for me to bring the hand over. Now, his head and his strangle hand are on the same side. There's no more danger. Okay, he can be underneath my arm, means nothing. Okay, now, from the situation, again, I look to get my elbow to the floor. The second my elbow touches the mat, it's an effective frame, which means now there's no danger of a strangle. I focus my mind now on attack instead of defense. All I do is slip my hips out and away from my opponent and focus on getting my feet to the inside position. So as he comes up into top position, he comes right up into a potential Ashigarami. Once we're in positions like this, we know what to do. We're always looking to turn around our training partner and start going in on the attack, okay? Using any one of the various methods that are available to us. Once we get into situations like this, not difficult for us to launch into a wide variety of different Ashigaramis and look for different forms of finish. So once again, my opponent's behind me. He does a good job of tilting me towards the strangle side. From here, I do a good job of getting my body parallel with the mat. Under these circumstances, I switch my hand grip so I have two thumbs underneath his wrist. Now from here, as I turn in, it's not difficult for us to bring our head looking back towards him and start going down the body. I focus on getting my elbow to the floor so it forms an effective frame. The danger now is no longer the strangle, the danger is he will get mounted. So I place my foot right inside. This will give us an excellent opportunity to enter into Ashigaramis. From here, it's not difficult for us to start lifting people. Once we get that initial lift, it's pretty easy for us to go around the corner and start getting into some of our favorite finishing positions. Demonstrating from a different angle. First, one thing never changes. We're always looking to win that hand fight. As he takes us down towards the floor, this is where he wants me to be. I want a situation where we start turning like so. Now, from situations like this, people will often tell you, don't reach down to the feet. As long as I have inside thumb position, it's fine in this particular side. As he hooks in tight with his foot, look how I can just use my hand and just briefly take the foot off and go back to my double thumb position. Now, as I come out, I start turning back towards him and sliding down his body. I form an effective frame as my elbow touches the floor. As we move away from our training partner, my legs come in. It's kind of like a quasi-elbow escape from here. Now from here, it's not a difficult thing for me to start that lifting and elevation that brings our body around the corner and into a potential winning position. There's a sense in which these sliding elbow escapes are bound up with very similar principles. Principles of winning the hand fight, getting your opponent's head and strangle hand on the same side, and ultimately sliding away from your opponent in a way which enables you to get your elbow to the floor. Once your elbow touches the floor, cat's out of the bag. Makes no sense to keep thinking in terms of defense now. Makes a lot more sense to start thinking in terms of counter offense. Instead of passively putting your opponent back in guard, we put them into a threatening leg lock using Ashigarami as our form of connection. We understand that it's no more difficult, and arguably even easier, to go into Ashigarami than it is to put them back in guard. You could go with the satisficing option. You could just put them back in guard. It wouldn't be wrong. But why? When for the same energy expenditure, you could put them in Ashigarami and finish him. Why put them in a neutral position when you can put them in a finishing hold? That's the mindset that I want you taking. So there we have two forms of the sliding elbow escape. One going to the underhook side, the other going to the over side. In both cases, there's some similarities. The hand fight remains almost identical. The idea of getting the head and strangle arm on the same side is, the idea is the same. The means of doing it is different. In one case, we simply slide out. In another, we transfer across. The idea of getting your elbow to the mat is similar for both. And the idea of counter-attacking, rather than just putting your opponent back in guard, going to a leg lock, is the same. The only real difference is this idea of taking our opponent's arm and bringing it over our head. Now, guys, realistically, make a strong arm. You're never just going to be able to lift a strong man. That's just not realistic. You don't lift it, you slip underneath it. So once we start coming out to the side, we've done a good job of beating that lower leg. My whole thing is to look back into him. You're not going to be able to lift a strong man's arm. But what you can do is slide down the body. Okay? So it's like I just walk down and away. And that's what brings the hand over. Then leaves that frame. And from here, you've got your Ashigarami. Once you're confident of your ability to attack and go on through, you'll be pleasantly surprised how often you'll be able to come out of a bad situation directly into a fight finishing submission hold. Let's look at a topic which really needs to be addressed. This is the topic of getting out of a body triangle. When someone is behind you and they've locked not only the rear mounted position, but they've solidified it with a body triangle. This always compounds the difficulty of the escape. My students are famous for the success that they had both with and against body triangles in EBI overtime competition. None of my students were ever successfully strangled from the back or held successfully in body triangles. They always managed to get out. Success against the body triangle is slightly more difficult than against the rear mount, I'll grant you that. But it is by no means impossible if you just know what you're doing. Let's start off by looking at why the rear body triangle is a little more problematic than basic rear mount techniques. I should say, guys, I'm not allowed to do escapes to a rear body triangle because it puts a lot of pressure on my hip replacement. So this is one thing I'm not allowed to do. So I'll have my trusty stalwart assistants, Giancarlo and the Puerto Rican guy, work here and demonstrate this. Let's have a look at Placido and Giancarlo lock up. Okay, as they fall, let's understand that there's two options here. The triangle can be locked on either side of the body. That will influence slightly the method of getting out. I'm just going to throw a few initial observations at you guys. A method of escape which was often taught when I was beginning in Jiu-Jitsu, and you still see it being taught today. The man takes the foot over the top and locks it in, and they turn their bodies. Let's rotate this way, guys. Good. They turn their bodies to the floor, and then Placido arches as he takes two hands and pushes on his opponent's knee. Two hands, pushes on the knee, and goes into a kind of a footlock situation like so. Okay. I don't mean to sound overly pessimistic or sarcastic. I don't teach this for a reason, because it's pretty much a waste of time. You can get someone who's very inexperienced to submit to this method of attack, but the truth is, if someone has gotten behind you and has locked a body triangle, then presumably they're better than you are, at least in some areas of jiu-jitsu. So the chance of getting someone who's actually good to submit with this rather feeble technique is exceedingly low. This is borne out by experience in EBI competition, where this method was tried by numerous competitors and never even got close to a submission, and was often the result of the failure of the technique resulted in the person being strangled as they attempted it. So let's kind of discount this footlock method as a viable method of escaping. We'll focus instead on some other elements. Now, with that being said, let's understand that the difference here. If we just take a regular rear mount position for now, guys, just lock it in, good, and we fall to the side. The big problem here for Placido is to beat the bottom hook. If he can flatten his hips out, like so, it's a battle for Giancarlo's hook versus Placido's hip. As Placido's knee turns inwards, it becomes harder and harder for his opponent to maintain the hook. If Placido wanted to, he could also hand assist, knock the foot down, and then start coming on top of the leg. Okay? Now, that changes when you lock a body triangle. The moment a body triangle is locked, you can no longer beat the bottom foot, okay, because it's locked in place by the triangle. So when you try to shift your hips and move around, you suddenly find the whole top foot, bottom foot battle is a moot point. It's gone, because the legs are locked in place and one leg defends the position of the other leg. And so one of the starting positions of getting out of the rear mount becomes almost completely useless against the body triangle. That's why you get so many frustrated students who are very good at defending a conventional rear mount, but can't get out of any rear body triangle. And they'll come to you and say, like, oh man, I can get out of any rear mount, no problem, but body triangle just kills me. That's the reason. Because, back to rear mount, the whole issue of beating the bottom foot is just a non-issue anytime you've got a body triangle locked up, okay? Because the rear foot is supported by the body triangle itself. Okay, it's held in place, so there's no rear foot to beat. So that's why you can be someone who, perhaps you're one of those people, can be very good at escaping rear mount, but can't even get started against the body triangle. Come back up, fellas. Now, let's look at what is similar. That's the difference between escaping from a body triangle. Square up to the camera. That's the difference between escaping from a body triangle versus rear mount. Now let's look at the similarities. One thing never changes, and based upon what we said earlier, I'm sure you can all guess what that is. The hand fight. Regardless of whether you're in rear mount or a body triangle, the hand fight comes first. That's so important, I'm going to say it again. No matter whether we're in a body triangle or rear mount, your first duty is to win the hand fight. Winning the hand fight comes down to keeping our opponent's strangle hand at the sternum. If Giancarlo's strangle hand migrates up and across, it becomes a real issue now for Placido. So Placido wants to keep the strangle hand low. That means he can put a lot of pressure on his opponent's seatbelt. It means that he can move his head and chest much more freely than if the hands are high and up by the shoulder. Okay? It also means that if Giancarlo ever goes to switch to a stranglehold, his hands will be monitored and held in place, and the stranglehold will be quite difficult. So always, regardless of whether it's rear mount or body triangle, win the hand fight first. Everything comes off that. Now, with those basic ideas in mind, the quick summary here, let's forego the idea of footlock defenses. History has shown pretty clearly they're just not very effective. Even if you could, by some surreptitious means, get to the footlock position at World Championship, people just ignore the pain and just keep strangling you while you're fiddling around with a useless footlock. Let's understand that we can't just hit moves that work well against the rear mount, because the basic idea behind escapes the rear mount to beat the bottom foot doesn't apply in the case of a body triangle. And thirdly, the idea that the hand fight comes first remains the same. That's the one thing that just doesn't change. With that in mind, let's cut now and then go to a scene where we start to look at getting out of a really tight, well-performed body triangle. let's start looking at some concrete methods that are going to get you out of a world championship level body triangle and back into some offense. Okay, I want to introduce you guys to the theory of the 4 triangles. Let's have a look at this. When Giancarlo locks a body triangle and commits his body down towards the mat, you will quickly see that there are 4 main variations of body triangle that your opponent can employ. Okay, the first and arguably the strongest of the 4 is the outside body triangle, where he locks a good tight body triangle and the triangle leg is on the outside of his opponent's legs here. Sometimes people will hook behind the knee. Okay, that's not essential, but it happens occasionally. Doesn't really matter. What does matter is that the triangle leg be on the outside of your legs. Okay, so this is the first and arguably the most powerful option. This provides excellent control of the entire line of the hips and a really strong connection. So let's put this as arguably the most desirable of the body triangles, the outside body triangle. Now, your opponents know this is a very good way of controlling people. So what they will often do is Placido will pommel his knee underneath and bring it like so. This constitutes an inside body triangle, where now Giancarlo's leg has migrated to the inside position like this. If he forms a tight triangle, lock it up tight, good, and back heels his leg tightly into his opponent's hip like so, it actually forms a very good triangle. Okay, you could argue it's not quite as good as an outside body triangle. It's not as simple as that. I would say they're both excellent. Me personally, I have shorter legs, so my preference is actually this one. But if I had the length of legs of Giancarlo, I might prefer an outside body triangle. The point is, they're both damn good. Okay, and you can control a lot of people for a long time in these 2 positions. Okay, so this is the second option, the inside body triangle. Now, every so often you're going to see an inside cross. An inside cross is where Giancarlo takes his foot and hooks it in place here behind the knee. This version of the triangle is actually seen quite often when both athletes are standing and one guy has gotten behind the other and locked a body triangle. You don't see it so much on the ground for a simple reason. Okay, I'll demonstrate in a minute. But you often see this move when the 2 athletes are standing, one guy's gotten behind the other, thrown in 2 hooks, and he'll lock this inside cross. So once again, the inside cross, you extend the leg. So the difference between an inside cross is the leg is extending versus the inside where it's back heeling. So one pulls back and the other extends forward. Okay. Now, the reason why this is a good move in the standing position is because if they were standing, Placido can't move his leg. He's standing on it. Okay. If he tried to move his leg, this would trip him. But on the ground, it's not so effective for a simple reason. Giancarlo's leg can only move so far forward. Okay, that's the maximum right there. His leg's at maximum extension. But Placido's leg is not even close to maximum extension. He can easily move out and extend and come through. Okay, so this inside cross is seen in standing situations quite often. Every so often you see it down on the floor, but in truth, it's not the most impressive of the triangles for this simple reason. What does sometimes happen is you'll have a naive opponent who's mistakenly coming back with the legs and trying to shift his hips towards me, plant his foot, and shift his hips. So if Placido was a neophyte, not a very skilled jiu-jitsu player, he might try to plant his foot and shift his hips. That's exactly when Giancarlo would use this move. Okay, but if Placido was smart, he wouldn't do that. He would extend his leg, beat the hook, and then go to work. Okay, so what have we got so far? We've got outside triangle, which is arguably, sometimes no, sometimes yes, the strongest of the triangles. We've got inside triangle, another excellent option. We've got inside cross, which works well in the standing position and against naive opponents, but has the problem that it can't follow the movement of an opponent. Okay, now there is a 4th triangle. The 3 that we've looked at so far are very good, going from extremely good to very good and decent. The last triangle is pathetic. It is a weak and feeble triangle. That is where Giancarlo tries to lock the triangle over the second hip on the outside. Okay, this triangle, as you can tell just by looking in the camera, is not a true triangle at all. The angle means you go from a true triangle, a true senkaku, to some kind of messy crossing of the feet kind of situation, which is not at all strong. From Placido's perspective, what he doesn't want is the strongest triangle for obvious reasons. It's good for Giancarlo, bad for Placido. He doesn't want the inside triangle. That's also pretty good for Giancarlo. He doesn't want this, the inside cross. What he does want is the outside cross. The outside cross, where both feet are on the outside and the Senkaku has basically lost its true shape, is the weakest by far of all the body triangles. Placido's goal is to convert every body triangle into the outside cross. That's so important, I'm going to say it again. When Placido defends the body triangle, one of his primary goals is to convert any one of the 4 triangles into this, the weakest of them all, the outside cross. So we're going to start off now in a 4 body triangle. Let's face the camera a little more directly, guys. Okay, so right now Giancarlo is winning. He's got the outside body triangle. Very, very good for him. Very bad for Placido. Placido pommels his leg to convert the outside into the inside triangle. Now that's better, but still Giancarlo's in a pretty damn good position. Okay, now Placido is going to take his body and take this knee and force Giancarlo into the outside cross. Now things are looking good for Placido. At this point here, because he's done a good job of winning the hand fight, it is permissible for Placido to start to turn towards his opponent. Stop. He's going to monitor the strangle arm with inside wrist position, take his second hand and grab over the leg and pull it. That immediately splits the legs apart and creates a situation where all he has to do now is shrimp out, get his elbow to the mat, and throw his legs to Ashigarami. As his opponent tries to come up on top, he can attack in any numerous number of ways, depending on his opponent's head position. If the head moves away, he's going to go to outside Ashi. If the head moves towards him, he's going to go into cross Ashi variations. And from here, he's got his win. Let's have a look at that whole thing again. So we start off. Let's understand the theory of the 4 triangles. We go down to the floor. There are 4 possible body triangles when we work on this side of the body. Okay, there are other triangles when we lock on the bottom side. Don't worry, I'll cover that soon. When we've got a top side body triangle, there are 4 triangles. Outside, inside, inside cross, and outside cross. Outside cross is the one Placido, the defensive player, wants. Giancarlo always wants a variation of the other 3. So our goal is to migrate through the various triangles step by step until we get to the weakest one. Don't try to fight the strongest triangle, fight the weakest one. First, take away the strongest one of them all with a simple leg pommel. Convert it into an inside triangle. Now, pommel with the second leg and bring to the weakest of all the triangles, the outside cross. The minute you're in an outside cross, monitor the strangle hand with inside thumb position. Take the other hand and grip, and use the hand assist to split the legs and turn into Ashigarami. As your elbow touches the mat, good. Then you look at your opponent's head position. If the head moves away, heel exposure. If the head moves towards you, left elevate, and end up in some variation of cross Ashigarami. Some of you like 50-50, some of you like double cross, some of you like inside Senkaku, whichever one you like. Okay, so one more time. The theory of the 4 triangles. Here, the strongest of all the triangles, the outside triangle. Turn it into an inside triangle. Good. This is also a very good triangle. Turn it into the weakest of all triangles. Good. Once we're here, monitor the strangle hand. Hand assist, split the legs, elbow to the floor, and we're on the attack. Now guys, do you notice that one thing doesn't change? Once your elbow touches the mat, it's attack time. That's the critical point, the point of no return where Giancarlo no longer has any offensive options and he must try to come up on top to preserve his position. The second your elbow touches the mat, that's the critical tipping point where you're going to go from a defensive mindset to an offensive mindset. And instead of just putting your opponent back in guard, you're going to put him in Ashigarami. It didn't cost you anything extra, and instead of just putting him back in a neutral position, you put him into a situation where you can finish him and win the match with a beautiful submission hold. Now, we're looking at the idea of getting out of one of the most difficult situations in all of Jiu-Jitsu. This is the body triangle, and this is often a source of a lot of vexation and frustration for many of you. We looked at this idea that there are 4 kinds of triangle. If you understand how they work, it's pretty easy for us to manipulate our opponent's body triangle from the strongest all the way down to the weakest and get into some really nice escapes. Now, the more attentive among you are probably saying at this point, wait a minute, there's some obvious triangles that you're overlooking. And you're absolutely right. There are 4 body triangles when my opponent's triangle lock is on the top side of my body. But of course, there's a 5th option. You can take the triangle and put it on the bottom side, and then things start getting interesting. So let's look at the problem. We've got Placido locked up by Giancarlo, and he locks on a body triangle, and he falls to the side of the lock. So now we have a body triangle, but the lock of the triangle is on the bottom side. Okay, first thing you want to notice in these situations, if Placido tries to just turn away from me, that body triangle is a huge wedge underneath his hips, and it makes rotation in that direction exceedingly difficult. Okay, so that's the first thing you're going to notice. Next thing, and this is very important for what we're going to be looking at. Whenever someone goes to lock a body triangle on the bottom side, the tightness of the triangle is down here. Okay, but you're going to notice that there's a huge hole in the triangle, in the crook of your training partner's knee. That means there's space for Placido's hip to turn into. If you were to lock your body triangle on the other side, Giancarlo, in a top side body triangle, there's no space to get through. There's no space at all. So when Placido goes to move his hips around, it feels like there's an iron bar controlling the top hip. But in the case of a bottom side triangle, there's actually a large amount of space to go through. So what happens is Placido can actually turn his hips quite a long way and square up his body to the ceiling. Okay, this is facilitated by the fact, let's go back a step, fellas, that Giancarlo's seatbelt is locked here with the strangle arm on the bottom side. That means that Placido's shoulder can get to the mat. These 2 things, the fact that Placido's shoulder can get to the mat because the strangle arm is going over the shoulder, and the fact that the triangle is locked on the bottom side, the 5th triangle, giving us a lot of space to work with, to turn into, means that Placido can turn and rotate his body quite a significant distance so that it comes almost parallel with the mat. Now that's a very significant thing. What we want to do is keep turning as far as our body, as far as our opponent's body lock, the triangle body lock, and the seatbelt will permit. It won't be all the way, but you'll be pleasantly surprised to learn it will permit quite a significant amount of turn. Okay, so we turn as far as we can go. Now you hit a sticking point. There's a sticking point where you can't turn any further. You've maxed out on how far you can turn. Okay, Placido's holding a tight, Giancarlo's holding a tight seatbelt, and his body triangle is now locked his training partner in place. At this point, we're going to hit a movement not unlike tipping, as we saw earlier in the mounted escape situations. We're going to take our 2 feet off the ground, where our hips are now relatively square with the ceiling, and we're going to hit a whip over, where one leg goes high, one leg goes low, and I use my 2 legs to kip my body and get rotation so that my hips go from being square with the ceiling to perpendicular to the floor. Okay, so Placido hits a sticking point, and now he whips and turns. That's going to give him an ability to put his feet on the mat and slice his elbow into his opponent's elbow. That means he can get his elbow to the floor, and as a result he can cut back, turn into the body triangle, and get an effective escape. Okay, now there's a very important detail that has to do with your opponent's elbow, and all 3 of us are going to come very close to the camera now so you can see this. Okay, let's take that side on body position facing this way, guys. Okay, first, we understand now that because our opponent is using a bottom side triangle, there's going to be a lot of space to turn in our hips. We understand that our opponent has a seatbelt with the over side of the seatbelt here, so that our shoulder can get to the mat. Okay, if our shoulder can get to the mat and we can turn into this big empty space in the triangle, Placido, turn. We turn and we max out the degree of turn we can get. Now, here's something interesting. There's a clash of elbows here. Tight. Placido, try to turn your elbow inside Giancarlo's elbow. It locks. Okay? Get your elbow as far in as you can turn. Now, keep turning, Placido. Reach your maximum. Right, that's it. There's your sticking point. Okay? Yep. He's stuck at the elbow and the triangle. This is where the kips in. Kip. Good. Now, the elbow versus elbow. Take your elbow and slip into the crook. Hold tight, strong. Don't let him get out easily. You're going to slip the crook of your elbow into the crook of his elbow. I don't care how tight and strong your opponent is, you'll always be able to get out. Okay, come back a step. Sometimes if you catch, go in and catch, strong, tight. Straighten your arm out. The straight arm slips through like spaghetti and you're free. As soon as your elbow touches the floor, whip your body up and come into top position. Okay, so you want to find the crook of your opponent's elbow and slip the point of your elbow inside the crook of his elbow. Okay, so again, you want to slip the point of your elbow inside the crook of his. So let's take that back. Okay, we're introducing the fifth body triangle, which is the body triangle locked on the bottom side. Okay, we understand there are two things holding us in place. One is the body triangle, the other is the seatbelt, and you have to be able to beat both. The good news is the seatbelt is locked in such a way that we can get our shoulder to the mat. Okay. The other piece of good news is, because it's a bottom side triangle, there's a lot of space to turn into and move our hips. Step number one is to turn your body into the space here and the fact that your shoulder's on the floor, and square your body up as far as it'll go. You're going to be able to turn a certain distance, and then there's going to be a sticking point. When you get to that sticking point, stop. From the sticking point, take your 2 feet up off the floor and hit that whip over and turn. Now the last battle is the battle of the elbow. Okay, from here you control your training partner's strangle hand. Alternatively, you can post on your training partner's knee. Straighten out your arm so that your elbow slips inside the crook of his elbow, and then quickly whip your legs up and end up in top position. This is a highly effective escape. Let's have a look at it one more time. Okay, we're in a bottom side triangle now, which is quite a different challenge. Let's look at top side triangle. A very different challenge from a top side triangle. We've already seen how to beat the top side triangle. Now we're going to bottom side. Lock it tight seatbelt. Start with the whole body, chest to back. Good, so it's not going to be easy for Placido. Good. Now from this position, step number one, take advantage of the space. Take advantage of the fact that your shoulder can get to the ground. Always monitoring your opponent's hands, winning the upper body battle. Make sure he can't switch to a strangle at any given time. Okay, with all that in place, first step number one, get everything squared up. Get to that sticking point. Okay, Placido, are you on the sticking point?
Yes, sir.
Take your feet off the floor. Now, whip your legs and go past the stick. Now, stop. From here, it's all about the battle of the elbows now. This is the third big battle. Make it easier by straightening. Either maintain the grip here or post on the knee. They're both good options. Okay. From here, elbow down to the floor. Beautiful. Cut back and done. Excellent. You guys are doing great. Now, let's do one realistic now, like you're in an EBI final. Placido, there's $20,000 on the line. Actually, there's not. You went over.
I'm quitting this job then.
Let's lock up and work your way through it, Placido. Beautiful. Excellent. Okay. That's my favorite way to deal with the problem of the fifth triangle, the bottom side triangle. A specific situation that often confounds students when they get stuck in tight body triangles from back. Okay guys, we're looking at the idea of getting out of a very complicated situation, the body triangle. Because body triangles are typically seen in a more advanced context in Jiu-Jitsu, usually the guy who's doing it to you has some serious skills. So you've got to know what you're doing to get out of this tricky situation. We looked at the previous move, the idea of the 4 triangles, the 4 body triangles. And we saw that if we can make our opponent's body triangle go from strongest to strong, to slightly less strong, to weak, then we can employ our standard methods of escaping from the rear mount. You basically convert over a simple series of leg movements your opponent's leg configuration from the strongest body triangle into something pretty close to a regular rear mount. And when he's in that outside cross position, just use a regular rear mount escape and then go into your counterattacks and everything will be fine. Now, let's look at a situation where you're working with an opponent who has very good leg dexterity, and for whatever reason, you are unable to make him go through the 4 triangles and get from strongest to weakest. Okay, this guy, I don't know what he's doing, but he's just got a damn good body triangle, and you're really struggling to take him through the 4 triangles and get to that weak position. So what are we going to do now? My general philosophy is, if I can't break my opponent's connection at the legs, I'll break his connection at the chest. Always remember, guys, if we just lock up a body triangle, fellas, your opponent, when he has a body triangle, has 2 closed sets of wedges around your body. The first one, obviously, is the body triangle itself. You will see that a triangle is a closed set of wedges locked into the floor where now Placido can barely move his hips. He also has a seat belt locked in here. So this means that Giancarlo's hips are locked to Placido's lower back and his chest is locked to Placido's upper back. As a result, if Placido were to try and spin his way out of this, you would see that Giancarlo easily follows his body movement. Come back this way, guys. Come back. Stay in it. Now, you'll see that as Placido goes to turn, good. Now roll away from me. Good. The connection is not broken. Coming back. When you have 2 sets of closed wedges, one around the hips, thanks guys, one around the hips and one around the back, there's no breaking that connection. You can't just roll out of it. You'll just roll and your opponent will stay locked to you and you'll keep rolling forever and eventually he'll just turn it into a strangle and that's it. The match is over. So turning and rolling will not work if he has 2 closed wedges, one around the hips, one around the chest and shoulders. But what if we were able to take one of those connections and break it? Well, we saw how to do that with the theory of the 4 triangles. We broke it at the lower body. If I can't break it at the lower body, I've got to break it at the upper body. Now, let's come close to the camera. Placido, I'll take this one because I can demonstrate this.
Sure.
You're behind me, Placido. Just on your knees, buddy. Just on your knees.
Yep.
Okay. If someone's got a seatbelt locked in here, it's not easy just to break a seatbelt. If this guy has any kind of physicality at all, make a strong grip, buddy. I weigh more than Placido does, but man, the chances of me just breaking a seatbelt here is pretty remote, okay? But I can start to peel hands. Remember, fellas, it's illegal for me to start grabbing single digits. That's not allowed in the sport of jiu-jitsu. Not only is it not allowed, but if you do that kind of thing in the training hall, you're going to piss off some people you're training with and things can get ugly. So let's make sure that when we go to peel, we never try to pull digits away and do this kind of thing. That is unacceptable, okay? Nonetheless, you are allowed to get inside with all of your digits inside like so. Here, you are not separating the thumb away from the hand. You are just working like so. And from situations like that, you can realistically peel hands. So I lock in and I dig 4 fingers inside. I'm not separating his thumb from his hand. I'm just separating the hands themselves. And this can realistically be done. Okay? So this is one way to achieve separation. I'm just going to come very close to the cameras, guys. You may not be able to see this. Plus, if you just take a higher position behind me. Okay. This, unacceptable. You are separating. This, unacceptable. You are separating fingers like so. This is single digit manipulation. This is no good. Okay, not only is it illegal, but as I said, you'll piss people off if you're training with them. This kind of thing, relax, buddy, where I grab here is legal because I am not separating the thumb away from the hand. This is fine. It's fully legal. This is fine. I'm grabbing the fingers, but I'm grabbing all of them together. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that. Okay, so if someone grips and I peel here, I can separate hands. This is legal. Okay, and it's realistic. This is something you can do against strong opponents. Okay, so I never just try to I never try to push. No, you're never going to separate anyone's hands like this. Even a heavyweight couldn't separate a lightweight's hands this way. Okay, but I can work my fingers in so all 4 fingers get underneath. And now as Placido goes to hold his grip, you can just work and separate the hands. And this, sir, is realistic. Okay, so I go in, strong Placido, and when I just take my time, work, and break the grips. That's realistic. Okay, so you can break the grips apart in a way which is legal and will work on people who are stronger than yourself. Now, having said that, would I, at the age of 54, be able to do that against a 25-year-old who's 2 weight divisions heavier than me and does a lot of strength and conditioning? No, probably not. Okay, and those circumstances where there's a big strength difference, I would probably rather play a waiting game where I just cover his hands. Okay, now why did Placido get behind me? To strangle me, right? That's what he wants to do. So I just monitor the hands. And as Placido goes for his strangles, I take the hands apart. I just play a waiting game. I know at some point he wants to go to a strangle. He can't just hold me forever. He's got to do something. Okay, so as he plays in this position, I see him go off for the strangle. I separate them. So there's 2 ways to do it. I can do it proactively by getting hands inside and then physically separating them. That's very workable against people your own size and strength. If they're bigger and stronger than you, I recommend doing it reactively, where you basically wait for them to go to strangle you. And when they do, there's separation. Okay? So those are the 2 methods that we'll work with. Now, fellas, let's take that back to the mat. Okay. Placido has been taken down, his opponent's gotten behind him and locked up. Okay? From here, Placido goes in and monitors the hands. We'll take it as a reactive method where Giancarlo goes to strangle and Placido takes the hands and separates them. Okay? Like you're kind of trying to break out of a tight shirt or something like that. As we separate the hands, you have now broken one of the 2 forms of connection. He's still got a body triangle, but you've broken the hands apart. When you've broken the hands apart, something interesting starts to happen. Placido gets an ability to break the contact of chest to back by coming forward, so separation occurs. It probably won't be that much separation in a competitive situation, but even a small amount makes a big difference. In addition, he gets an ability to get separation by sliding away, like so. Not that much. If a tight body triangle, good tight, keep it tight. You might only move a little bit. Anything you can do is money in the bank. Even the smallest misalignments are good. Okay? Now, when we separate those hands, Placido is going to go into a turning escape. What is a turning escape? That's where Placido makes 1 full rotation. He goes once to the east. As he comes through, he stops and comes back the other way to the west. And he's focusing, you guessed it, on getting his elbow to the floor. That never changes. Once his elbows touch the mat, he turns inside the body triangle and comes up into a winning position. Okay? So let's have a look at that again. Let's go close to the wall, guys. So, you're in a body triangle, and for whatever reason, you find yourself unable to take your opponent through the 4 triangles. So now you've got to work at the upper body instead. We get separation of the hands. Okay, good news is the upper body has been separated, and that's going to set up a successful spin. Now, in slow motion, it's hard to do it in slow motion, but we'll do our best. Placido is going to begin turning. As you begin to turn, you get separation of chest and back. He turns inside his opponent's body, in particular, inside his training partner's body triangle. Comes up, elbow to the floor, and faces his opponent square. Okay, now I'm just going to demonstrate this solo, guys, so people can see what's happening here. What are we doing here? I have an opponent, an imaginary opponent, here on my back. I separate the hands so that I can get some separation of my chest, his chest from my back. Doesn't have to be much, just a little is fine. I begin rolling to the east. I make 1 roll through. As I come out, his body momentum is going to the east. I started rolling to the east, he's following me, and all his body momentum is going east. As he comes over, I'm just a little bit ahead of him in the roll. From here I plant, and I shift the other way. And I scoop my body to the west. So as he's going east over top of me, I'm going west underneath him. And what happens is I turn a smaller circle inside the circle of his body triangle. I focus on getting my elbow to the floor. As he comes over me, I've turned under him. And as a result, I can scissor and come up in his closed guard. Okay? So once again, Posito's whole thing is to create a momentum to the east. So here we are. Separate the hands. Remember, guys, if you don't separate the hands, he can stick to you all day. You can roll as far as you want. He'll stay on you. But if we separate the hands and get a small amount of separation between his chest and our back, that's more than enough right there. Probably won't even be that much in a tight contest. Posito hits an aggressive roll, turns, and then changes direction to come back the other way and slices the elbow. Now, guys, we're going to do it again. This time, I want you to pay particular attention to Posito's elbow. Okay? Here's an important point for you, fellas. The critical demarcation point as to whether or not you've escaped the body triangle or not, it's the one thing that no one talks about. It's your elbow. The elbow is the demarcation point that denotes whether you've escaped or whether you haven't escaped. If your elbow can touch the mat, you are out. One time at an EBI competition, there was a huge set of disagreements over what constituted a satisfactory escape to a body triangle. People say, nah, that's not an escape. I stood up and I said, listen, guys, there's a simple rule. If the elbow touches the floor, you're out. The minute you get a situation where you're no longer behind your opponent's elbows, you're no longer on his back. The elbow is the demarcation point. So let's have a look at this again. This time, pay particular attention to Posito's elbow. Okay? As they roll through. Good. Turning. Watch the right elbow. It chops and cuts inside. Okay? If your elbow is in front of your opponent's body, he no longer has your back. Let's take this in slow motion. Sorry, I don't mean to linger on this point so long, but it's super important you understand this. Okay. Roll through in slow motion. Okay, stop. Now, from here, this is Posito's left elbow. Ignore it. Focus on Posito's right elbow. As they roll through, stop. Here's the right elbow. Okay, good. As they continue rolling, it comes in close and cuts down to the floor. The second that elbow touches the mat, you turn inside his closed guard and come up into neutral position on top. Now, with that in mind, now you're visually locked in. Let's do it fast. So, from here, aggressive spin, elbow cut back, and you're out. Okay? You can see what's happening here, guys. We're creating a spinning momentum to the east, and then as opponent tries to follow the momentum, pull your elbow through and cut back to the west. He's going one way, you're going the other. You're both a little bit sweaty. Presumably by the time you get to the rear mount, there's been some action, and you cut through and go. So one more time. Working out full speed. Posito breaks the hands, spins, and cuts through. And this is an excellent depiction of how this move works in a realistic fashion. This is one of the most successful moves when we worked in EBI competition. A splendid way to get out of one of the trickiest situations in Jiu-Jitsu. Now, let's put this in the context of both of these moves together. Let's look first at the theory of the 4 triangles, and then we'll look at the theory of the misdirection. First, good. From here, Posito converts from the strongest to the weakest triangle. As a result, the connection of the body triangle at the hips has been broken, and now a conventional back escape, just like all the ones we saw earlier, will work just fine. He cuts his elbow to the floor, turns it into an ashigarami, and that's it. Not only have you escaped, you're in a position to finish him. Now, this time, the man's body triangle proves to be so tight, so strong, that escaping in the fashion just described is proving problematic. So now, instead of breaking the connection at the hips, we break the connection at the chest. Okay? From here, we start rolling, misdirect in the opposite direction, elbow cut, and come up inside our opponent's closed guard. These are two very practical and very effective ways to get you out of a body triangle without too much fuss and bother. Please bear in mind that body triangles take a little bit of getting used to. If you spend most of your time defending just the basic rear mount, your first couple of weeks are going to be problematic. It's a little more uncomfortable, but don't worry, you'll soon make fast progress. These are two very reliable, very effective methods of getting out of this very problematic position. Now, you guys are starting to see a lot of very interesting material with regards getting out of the body triangle. I'm sure that many of you are starting to puzzle something out at this point. You're starting to realize there's a very close relationship between the lower body battle and the upper body battle. What exactly do you mean by this? Just lock up the body triangle on Placido. Good. Now, from here, if Placido can get his shoulder to the mat, and that's easy because the overgrip of the seatbelt gets his rear deltoid to the mat very easily, it becomes quite easy for Placido to begin to turn and square up his hips and shoulders to the floor. Come back. But what if we switch the seatbelt so that here we went underneath and locked the seatbelt the other way? Okay. Now Placido can't get his rear deltoid to the mat. And so those sliding escapes where you get your shoulders to the floor get confounded by any form of underhook. Come around this way, fellas. So now the smart thing for Placido to do would be to drive his body to the other side. And as a result, Placido can now get his face this way, fellas. Now Placido can get his shoulder to the mat and he can hit the move that we looked at previously. Okay, very good, Placido. Nice. Okay. Now can you see what's happening here, fellas? If Placido can get his shoulders to the mat, he can transfer side to side and eventually work his way out. So what if Giancarlo was smart? He said, I see what this guy's doing. He's taking advantage of the fact that on one side of the seatbelt, in particular the strangle side, he can always get his shoulder to the mat. And as a result, he can start to rotate inside my body triangle. So Giancarlo employs a clever strategy. He goes underneath both arms. He switches away from a seatbelt and takes a high chest lock, double underhooks, just like so. This means that when he locks his body triangle, Placido cannot go side to side and get his shoulder to the mat because double underhooks prevent either shoulder getting to the mat. So now switching sides no longer has any effect. It cost Giancarlo something. Now he has no ability to strangle his opponent. But if you just wanted to hold someone in place with no intention of strangling, kind of like a stalling approach. I know I'm not an advocate of stalling, but someone could easily do this to you and hold you for long periods of time. This is arguably one of the trickier forms of body triangle to get out of because you could no longer get a shoulder to the mat on either side. That's going to rule out all of your spinning escapes and make them very difficult. If Placido tries to spin, you just can't even get his shoulder to the mat. Okay, Giancarlo can switch his body triangle side to side and cause all kinds of problems for him here. Whenever you see this kind of thing going on, we employ a different strategy. What we're going to do is we're going to bring our head forward. Now from here, we're going to get our head just like so, and we're going to start bridging. When we get to this bridge, we're going to take our arm and we're going to bridge and shoot our arm high overhead, just like so. We're going to form a headlock on our training partner. Just hold it in place. Now, using our opponent's head as a stabilizer, we're going to spin inside their triangle. Now, as you come up onto your knees, face this way, guys. As you come up onto your knees, you're in a perilous situation because you've got a headlock. Your opponent can go to a shoulder crunch grip and start sweeping you from here. You go into Udigatami and try and arm lock you. All kinds of things you can do from here. So let's make damn sure as we come up, our elbow is already retracting and our elbows end up below his armpits. You never want your elbows above the armpits. That's when you can arm lock you, shoulder crunch you, all kinds of things. So you want your elbows below the armpits, okay? Now we're going to come closer to the camera so you can see a lot more details here. Okay, you guys are understanding at this point that if you can get a shoulder to the mat, you can rotate inside the body triangle. So the opponent's smart. He takes double underhooks, precisely so that you can't rotate either shoulder to the floor. You can't just go from one side to the other to get a shoulder to the mat. Okay, so we're just going to show that's Giancarlo's lock. Okay, now Placido monitors the hands. From this position, we start to turn as best we can. We bring our head below our opponent's head. Now, you want to get eye contact, but you don't want to bring your head to him. It can't be a clash of heads. You want your head as far away from him as possible and turn back and face your opponent. If you can see your opponent's head, you're ready to go, okay? Now, you've got to be able to get your arm around his head. The only way you can do this is if your shoulder is lower than your opponent's jaw. The only way you can do that is to punch your arm out and bridge. And now, your armpit and shoulder is lower than his head. Come around the corner and grip. When you grip with your arm. Don't grip with your hands and don't be an asshole and start poking him in the eye, okay? Make a fist and then put your elbow in like so. So you've got like a schoolboy headlock on your training partner. Now, from this position, no need to monitor the hands anymore. There's no strangle at this point. Just focus now on whipping your body inside his triangle, coming up. Immediately withdraw your elbow, don't delay. Get those elbows back quickly, otherwise you're going to get caught in a counterattack, shoulder crunch, or what have you. Let's hit it one more time. So we've got a smart opponent who's figured out if the guy gets shoulders to the mat, it's going to be a problem. So he denies you the ability to get shoulders to the mat with double underhooks. This is not a dangerous opponent because he has no method of strangling you from this position. He has no method of transferring to an armbar or any other form of attack. So this is a rather negative kind of play on the part of your opponent. But there's lots of people out there who play a very negative game, and you got to be able to get out of their games just like all the other people. When you see this kind of thing going on, you can't do this move if your head can't get underneath them. Okay? So from here, we start bringing the head forward. We start switching head position. And now from here, we punch out overhead. We come around, lock, and we get a good headlock. Just holding around like so. Then from here, we spin inside the body triangle. We immediately withdraw our arm, and we're safe. Now we're going to hit the move in full speed, Placido. Let's come to the center of the mat. Good. Good. My only criticism on that one, Placido, there wasn't quite enough extension of your arm. You did a short headlock. Go out, boom, and around. Good. Go a little further out. Good. Really reach for the floor behind.
Yes, sir.
Punch out. Beautiful. Turn inside, elbows back. Well done. Beautiful. Okay. Now, here's a question. I'm sure some of you are looking and saying, hey, that looks pretty cool. I can see there's some virtue behind that. What if I can't win the battle for head position? What if I try to move my head underneath and the guy blocks me with his head? Good question. Let's have a look at that now. Now you got to hit a switching headlock. What is a switching headlock? Okay. Placido needs to get his head underneath his opponent's head. What if Giancarlo locks his head in and says, fuck you, you're not getting that head position, okay? When you see this, Placido, drive back directly towards me and take the head position on the other side. Now, bring your head away from his, look at him, punch through, come around, and spin inside the body. Elbows back, and you're back in place. Okay, excellent. One more time, Placido. Guys, let's face the camera a little more. Let's come closer to the camera so you can see details. Good. Excellent. Okay, tight Giancarlo. Now, Giancarlo is refusing to give up head position. He's doing a good job keeping the head in. Placido would like to be able to switch head positions. That's what he would like to do. Giancarlo's smart. He knows what the gambit is, and he's preventing that. As we fail on the right-hand side, we're going to win on the left. Punch back, come through, spin, elbows back, and done. Beautiful. Okay, that was excellent, guys. Now let's do one more, slightly more competitive. So Giancarlo, you're going to make Placido work on this one, and Placido, you may have to switch several times. Might be 2-3 times before you get out. Try hard on one side, come across, come back. That's it. Well done. Beautiful. Super Royale. Beautiful. Well done, fellas. That's exactly what we're looking for. That switching approach, going back left and right, is what's going to do it in top level competition. Guys, always remember, with every pin escape, don't think that when you're out there live, it's going to look as pretty as the demonstrations that we do here, okay? We're giving you the technology to get out, but when you're out there on the mats, working with people, it's not going to look as smooth as that. It's not going to be pretty. Okay, there's times you got to go left, right, try, fail, 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 and then succeed, and that's absolutely normal. All part of the normality out there on the mats. Again, it's not going to look pretty and smooth every time. It's going to be more like that. Try left, try right, try one method, switch back to another, and then ultimately succeed. You don't have to get out first time every time. That's not realistic. Okay, great stuff, fellas.